All right, so this is the exhaust fan motor out of my furnace. It was seizing up. I don't know if you can hear this. You can kind of hear that rough noise in the bearing. So this is going to be a single phase, you can see just by the two inputs there, a shunt wound motor, which you can see the winding shunt right there to start it. So these have very low starting torque. And what was happening is this guy was had a dead spot in the bearing, or there was a rough spot, and because of the low starting torque, it couldn't get moving. It couldn't overcome that dead spot, and it would fault out, and the furnace would not fire up as a result. So, fairly simple device. The body is just punched steel, a healthy amount of red silicone. This is the high temp RTV silicone stuff. It's got that spongy feel to it. Because this is evacuating exhaust gases, off the gas furnace. So obviously going to be seeing some pretty serious heat when it goes. Let's see. I suppose I could start off by taking off this fan. So this fan is held on with a Torx bit, what looks like a T20. Look at that. Man, I am good. Let's see if I can break it loose here. Obviously has gotten hot. So this little piece here, sometimes it's just useful to know the names of stuff so that when you're looking for parts and whatnot, you can actually find something. This little guy's called a shaft collar. So you could, if you needed to source this part, that's what you'd go to the hardware store and ask for. Believe it or not, hardware stores actually stock these in various shapes and sizes. And they're typically just identified by the, inner diameter, outer diameter. And then there are split kinds. There's the kind that has a set screw. That's, about all there is to that. We'll see as we go here how important it ends up being to actually get that out. And we could try a little percussive So these guys are going to have to come off first. So this is kind of interesting. They've got nuts that are serrated on both sides. I don't think I've ever seen that before. So it doesn't matter which way you put it on. You're going to have some, albeit limited, anti-back off. All right, now let's try that. This is the set screw. Oh, now it's good and seized. I don't see what could go wrong with this. All right, hopefully that gave it a little bit of stress relief and put a little heat in it. So, man, I can never for the life of me get that bushing out of there. So we'll try coming, or that shaft collar. We'll try coming at it from this end. Bing! All right, so on the outside here, we've got a bidirectional squirrel cage fan just for cooling the motor. We've got a couple screws holding that all together. All right, we've got a housing for the bearing. Appears to be die-cast zinc. It doesn't really feel like aluminum. We've got a rubber bushing for vibration. We've got a beveled thrust washer to provide some preload on the back side of the bearing. We've got well, here's the laminations. So the shunts are these two little sections here. Well, three sections, I guess. And again, that's to offset and give you effectively a second phase to start the motor. So once it starts turning, the shunts will, well, the shunts continue to work, but once it's kind of got its own inertia, you really only need one phase to keep it turning. But to start it turning, if it's standing still, the two phases are just going to go back and forth. So unless you've got some kind of extra push to get it to start turning, you're never going to actually have the motor start. The winding here, man, I wish I could get that apart. So the bearing is a 608 SSD21, made in Thailand, NMB, fairly common bearing brand that we find. We've got another cooling fan. So remember, this is going to be on the hot exhaust side of the furnace. So this is where the exhaust is coming off. So this whole assembly is going to be getting quite hot. We've got a squirrel cage fan on the inside. This little nipple here is to detect airflow. So this has a hose that fits on it and goes to a piezoelectric pressure sensor. And one of the, as the furnace is firing up and getting ready to fire off the igniter and ignite the flame, turn on the gas and ignite the flame, one of the things it's going to be looking for is airflow out of the exhaust. Because obviously, if you don't have airflow out of the exhaust, you can get carbon monoxide buildup, carbon monoxide poisoning, all that fun stuff. So, this whole section is going to be quite hot. We've got a second metal punched fan to cool the backside of the engine. And here's the actual commutator laminations, shaft that goes through there. Wish I could get it out, but this guy's being pretty stubborn. Not much to say there. Typically, typical iron laminations that you see. On the front side, what I'd really like to see under here is if there's a bearing, which it appears that there's another 608. I'm not sure how well it's going to come across on camera. Well, I think that there's another 608 bearing sitting here. So all the stick out on this shaft, all the wobbling in this fan is going to be taken up in this top bearing here, which makes sense because you don't want a bearing right next to hot exhaust gases. So, and that's probably why they went with the bearings in this situation as opposed to just using a bushing. Let's see, what else can we look at? So, my guess would have been that this was capped on tape, which is that high heat electrical tape, but it doesn't really feel like that. All right, so here we've got I think that's a thermostatic fuse. Yeah, I'll have to look that up, but I believe that that's going to be a thermo fuse, probably a resettable one. So if this overheats at some point, it's going to shut off and won't work until it cools back down. So again, part of that sensing, and the way that the furnace brain box is going to know that that's happening is this thing obviously won't be turning. I don't know if I can really get this any further apart. Yeah, I mean, this is just a standard coil winding. Like I said, with the shunt winding to be able to start and stop the motor. So, I guess that's about all I've got with this guy. Really wish I could get that off, but it's being pretty stubborn. Pretty stubborn. So anyway, thanks for watching.